London, 1803. A man named James Gillray sits in a studio at 27 St. James's Street. On the table, paper, ink, and an envelope from the British government. Inside the envelope, a secret annual payment of £200 from Prime Minister Pitt's intelligence fund. £200 per year, the equivalent of 3 years' salary for a commissioned army officer. Paid quietly, no public record, no official acknowledgement. Gillray looks at a blank sheet of paper. He has never met Napoleon Bonaparte. He has never been to France. He is working from a French engraving, a portrait he has studied for weeks. And he picks up his pen and deliberately draws the man in the portrait as the size of a small child. The man in the original portrait stands 1 meter 69 centimeters tall, the average height of a French male of that era. 220 years later, the entire world still calls him short. One question hangs over everything that follows. How does a single deliberate lie outlast an empire? Start with the central impossibility, because without confronting it directly, none of what comes after makes sense. Napoleon Bonaparte is not short. This is not a matter of interpretation, it is a matter of arithmetic. When Napoleon died in 1821, his death certificate recorded his height as 5 pieds 2 pouces, 5 feet 2 inches in French imperial measurement. British newspapers translated this directly into English, inches. They did not correct for the unit conversion. 1 French pouce, 1 French inch, is approximately 13% longer than 1 British inch. The correct conversion of 5 pieds 2 pouces into modern metric measurement is between 1 meter 69 and 1 meter 75 centimeters. By the most conservative calculation, Napoleon was average height for a European man of his time, and likely taller than the median for France. The second layer of evidence is architectural rather than numerical. Napoleon's Imperial Guard, the Garde Impériale, the elite unit that surrounded him daily, had a minimum height requirement of 1 meter 85 centimeters. Napoleon stood among these men every single day of his campaigns. He appeared shorter than the people immediately around him because the people immediately around him had been selected specifically for height. This is not a coincidence. It is the geometry of institutional prestige. The third layer concerns language. Le petit caporal, the little corporal, is the nickname French soldiers gave Napoleon after the Battle of Lodi in 1796. It was a term of affection, an expression of the bond between a general who walked into gunfire alongside his men and the soldiers who followed him there. It referred to his manner, not his measurements. British propaganda translated it literally and stripped the context entirely. Gillray did not create a lie. He created a cognitive architecture. And that distinction between a single false claim and a system that makes false claims feel true is the subject of this video. London, 1797. Britain is fighting for its survival. The French Revolution has executed a king. That single act sends a message to every monarchy in Europe that admits no ambiguity. The political order that has organized Western civilization for 1,000 years can be dismantled by a crowd in an afternoon. Louis XVI is dead. The Austro-Hungarian emperor is watching. Every crowned head in Europe is recalculating. Napoleon Bonaparte, at 27, has just concluded the Italian campaign, a series of victories so rapid and so complete that he returns to Paris as something France has not seen in generations, a general the public genuinely loves. He is not yet first consul, he is not yet emperor, but he is already the most dangerous man in Europe, and William Pitt, Prime Minister of Great Britain, understands this with absolute clarity. Pitt needs a weapon that is not a cannon. He needs to control how Napoleon is perceived, not just by the British public, which must be kept willing to fund an expensive and distant war, but by the courts of Europe, by the merchant classes, by the ordinary people in Amsterdam and Hamburg and Vienna, who are deciding whether this French general represents liberation or catastrophe. He turns to James Gillray. Gillray was born in 1756, the son of a one-armed soldier. He trained as an engraver before discovering that caricature paid better and demanded more. Before 1797, he worked without political allegiance. His prince attacked both major parties, mocked the king and the opposition with equal cheerfulness, and built a reputation as the sharpest visual satirist in Britain. After 1797, the Secret Service Fund payments began. The confirmation of this arrangement comes from multiple sources, including records held at the New York Public Library's print collection and documented in scholarly analysis of the period. Approximately £200 annually, channeled through Gillray's publisher Hannah Humphrey, with at least some commissions directly authorized by Foreign Secretary George Canning. Gillray is not simply a man who tells lies for money. He is a craftsman of perception. He understands something that most political operatives of his era do not. A funny image, repeated often enough, embeds itself in memory more permanently than any speech, any pamphlet, any logical argument. His operating principles are three. They are the same three principles that govern every meme campaign, every deepfake operation, and every coordinated disinformation effort in the 21st century. Reduced to a single image, simple enough for anyone to understand in 3 seconds. Repeat it until it becomes familiar, and aim at emotion rather than reason, because emotion bypasses the cognitive filter that catches explicit lies. The most important year in Gillray's Napoleon campaign. He produces Titty Doll, the great French gingerbread baker, Napoleon rendered as a tiny pastry seller in an oversized hat, dwarfed by the figures around him, his expression a mixture of pomposity and absurdity. In the same year, he produces The Handwriting Upon the Wall, in which Napoleon appears as a trembling miniature specter. Both prints are produced in runs of several hundred to several thousand copies. They are displayed in the windows of Hannah Humphrey's shop on St. James's Street, where pedestrians stop, look, laugh, and move on, carrying a cognitive image they do not know has been installed. In that same year of 1803, Napoleon is finalizing the negotiations of the Peace of Amiens, reviewing the last articles of the Code Civil, and approving the architectural plans for the first lycée network in French history. One man is building infrastructure that will govern civilizations for centuries. One man is drawing a picture of a small person in a large hat. The paradox that this video is built on is not that Gillray lied, it is that both men succeeded completely. Napoleon built what he built. The record is permanent. The Napoleonic Code is real. The metric system is real. Banque de France is real. And the image of a tiny man in an oversized hat is also real, still active in the cultural memory of every person watching this video, resistant to correction, immune to evidence, traveling across 2 centuries without losing a single step. Gillray did not write history. He installed a feeling, and feelings do not respond to footnotes. The full scale of the operation is larger than most people realize. Over the course of his career, Gillray produced more than 1,500 prints. The ones targeting Napoleon represent a sustained campaign without parallel in the history of visual propaganda before the age of mass printing. Hannah Humphrey's shop on St. James's Street functioned as the central distribution point. Prints were purchased by booksellers across London, reproduced in newspapers that received them at no cost, and carried by British merchants into the European continent, where they circulated through the Netherlands, the German states, and northern Italy. The amplification mechanism operated at 3 levels simultaneously. At the domestic level, the British public, asked to support a war that was expensive, geographically distant, and producing no decisive results, received a steady diet of images confirming that the enemy was ridiculous. Ridicule is politically sustainable in a way that fear is not. Fear produces war fatigue. Ridicule produces contempt, and contempt is much easier to maintain across decades. At the continental level, European courts that had political reasons to resist French expansion used the prints as social and diplomatic currency. An image is easier to circulate than a diplomatic argument. It requires no translation. It works on an illiterate servant the same way it works on an educated minister. At the historical level, and this is the mechanism that explains why the myth survives today, the linguistic error metastasizes into reference material. Napoleon's death certificate says 5 pieds 2 pouces. A British newspaper translates it as 5 feet 2 inches. No correction is issued. The measurement enters the record. Historians cite the record. Encyclopedias reproduce the figure. By the 20th century, The error has been laundered through enough secondary sources that it no longer appears as a translation mistake. It appears as a fact. This is not fake news. This is cognitive infrastructure. The difference is that fake news can be corrected. Infrastructure cannot be demolished by a single article. It has to be replaced at the level of the structure, which is why the myth of Napoleon's height has survived 2 centuries of historians, 2 centuries of measurement conversions, and the ready availability of the original French death certificate to anyone with internet access. You can show someone the conversion table. They will still picture a small man in a large hat. Now the reversal, stated plainly with full weight. While Gillray's studio on St. James's Street was producing its catalog of diminutive dictators, Napoleon Bonaparte was simultaneously executing one of the most consequential programs of institutional construction in modern history. In 1800, 3 years after the propaganda campaign begins, Napoleon establishes the Banque de France, the first true central bank France has ever had. In the decades since the Revolution, the French economy has been consumed by hyperinflation, currency collapse, and the financial chaos that follows the destruction of existing institutions without adequate replacements. The Banque de France stabilizes the currency, establishes a lending mechanism for the state, and creates the monetary infrastructure that allows the French economy to function as a modern economy. It still exists. It still functions. It is the ancestor of the European Central Bank. In 1801, the lycée system. State-funded secondary education, free and available to citizens on the basis of examination rather than birth. For the first time in French history, a boy from a provincial family of no social standing can compete for a place in an institution that leads to the university, the professions, and the officer corps. The lycée system is still the backbone of French education. There are more than 4,000 lycées in France today. In 1804, the Code civil des Français, the Napoleonic Code. This is the single most consequential legal document produced by a human being since Justinian's Corpus Juris Civilis in the 6th century. It codifies civil equality before the law. The same rules apply to every citizen, regardless of birth. It establishes individual property rights, the separation of religious and civil authority, and a rational framework for contract and inheritance that can function across a diverse, modern society. It is still the foundation of the legal systems of more than 50 countries: France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Louisiana in the United States, Quebec in Canada, most of Francophone Africa, and significant portions of Latin America. The metric system, standardized and imposed across every territory under French administration during Napoleon's rule, is currently used by every country on Earth except 3: the United States, Myanmar, and Liberia. The man being drawn as a figure the size of a child was rewriting the operating system of civilization. 2 timelines, running in parallel, arriving at 2 different endings. James Gillray, 1809. He begins showing signs of severe mental deterioration, most likely the result of chronic alcoholism, compounded by years of sedentary, isolated work. He stops producing prints. He stops leaving the building. In 1815, he attempts to throw himself from the 2nd-floor window of the shop he has lived in for decades. He survives the fall, but does not recover. He dies later that year, in the same building where he drew 200 pounds worth of small men in large hats, attended by Hannah Humphrey, having not produced a significant work in 6 years. The myth he built does not notice his absence. It continues without him. Napoleon, St. Helena, 1815 to 1821. After Waterloo, the British government exiles him to St. Helena, a volcanic island in the South Atlantic, 1,200 kilometers from the nearest landmass, chosen specifically because there is nowhere to go. He spends 6 years there, reading, dictating his memoirs, and receiving British newspapers. He reads what they say about him. Emmanuel de las Casas, who spends 18 months with Napoleon on St. Helena and records their conversations in Memorial de Sainte-Hélène, preserves this observation from Napoleon. What is history but a fable that has been agreed upon? He is not speaking abstractly. He has read the British press. He knows exactly what agreement has been reached. He dies on May 5th, 1821. The myth of his height does not die with him. It survives him by 203 years, and it is still running. The question that historical analysis alone cannot answer is, why? Why does this particular lie survive when so many others collapse under the weight of counter-evidence? The answer is cognitive, not historical. Processing fluency, a concept in cognitive psychology, describes the brain's tendency to assign higher credibility to information that is easy to process. A single image, small man, large hat, aggressive expression. The brain resolves that image in under 3 seconds. It requires no background knowledge. It makes no demands on working memory. The brain categorizes it, files it, and attaches a confidence weight to it that has nothing to do with its accuracy. Contrast this with the counter-evidence. A unit conversion calculation, a discussion of French imperial measurement, a comparison of the recorded heights of the Garde Impériale. All of this is accurate. None of it is processed in 3 seconds. The brain encounters it, registers it as effortful, and, in most cases, does not update the earlier, simpler file. The mere exposure effect compounds this. After seeing the image of a short Napoleon enough times, in textbooks, in films, in casual conversation, in comedy sketches, the brain has built a strong associative pathway. Even people who have been explicitly told the myth is false report that when they hear the name Napoleon, the image of a small man appears automatically. Correction does not erase the pathway. It adds a note to it. But the mechanism Gillray exploited most effectively is the one that modern disinformation campaigns have refined into an art form: humor. Gillray did not use angry accusation. He did not produce pamphlets arguing that Napoleon was dangerous. He drew a funny little man. Humor disables critical thinking. When a brain encounters a joke, it is oriented toward enjoyment rather than evaluation. The question it asks is this funny? Not, is this true? Information absorbed in a humorous frame bypasses the cognitive checkpoint that catches explicit falsehood. It enters long-term memory unexamined, tagged as entertainment rather than claim. Gillray did not invent lying. He invented the lie that the brain does not defend against. This is why memes are more dangerous than propaganda speeches. A speech activates the analytical mind. A meme makes people laugh. And while they are laughing, the message is already inside. The direct line from Gillray's studio to the present runs through every major conflict of the past 2 centuries. The term Napoleon Complex, describing aggressive behavior in short men as psychological compensation, was coined in the 20th century and named after a myth. It appears in popular psychology literature, in casual conversation, and in clinical contexts, built entirely on a foundation of deliberate disinformation from 1797. The myth generated a concept. The concept generated a body of literature. The literature made the myth appear to have been confirmed by science. This is the full life cycle of propaganda. False image produces cultural concept produces academic terminology. Academic terminology produces the impression of evidence. Evidence makes the original lie look like observation. The visual framework Gillray established, simple image, clear enemy identity, emotional rather than rational appeal, becomes the template for every modern visual propaganda campaign. The American WWI recruitment poster. The institutional imagery of authoritarian states in the 1930s. The coordinated meme campaigns of 21st century electoral politics. All of them are operating from Gillray's 3 principles: reduce, repeat, and target emotion. A 2018 MIT study found that false news spreads on social media approximately 6 times faster than true news, and that images spread approximately 3 times faster than text. Gillray did not have the internet. He had Hannah Humphrey's print shop window and a network of booksellers. The ratio was probably similar. In the ongoing conflict in Ukraine, both sides produce thousands of memes daily, designed for rapid sharing across international platforms. Each one engineered for the 3-second processing window. Each one built on the same principles Gillray codified in 1797. In recent election cycles across multiple democracies, AI-generated video and image content depicting candidates in fabricated scenarios accumulated millions of views before platform moderation could respond. The corrections accumulated far fewer. The people creating this content do not need to know Gillray's name. They need to know only what he knew from a studio at 27 St. James's Street with 200 pounds and an envelope on the table. A simple image, repeated often enough, does not need to be true to become real. Napoleon built an empire in 20 years. The empire collapsed. The legal system he wrote governs more than 50 countries today. The measurement system he standardized covers nearly every nation on Earth. The educational structure he designed still educates French children every morning, and people still call him short. What do you believe, or what has been installed in you?